Hey, welcome back. Welcome back. So, different format, just me and one guest, which means I am interviewing and one of our experts. These are one of our hub partners. We have about 24 hub partners in the BizBook Pub Hub. So, whatever you're trying to do, writing, editing, publishing, marketing, building your brand, come and check out everything at the bizbookpubhub.com. You'll get to meet all of our experts. Maybe you can attend one of our free virtual networking events that we host every month. So just go and check it out. Lots of show notes, good information. Without any further delay, let me introduce this week's guest. I'm pleased to interview one of our BizBook Pub Hub partners. Our hub partners are experts who support entrepreneurs along their author journey. Today's guest is a personal brand strategist and messaging expert with over a decade of experience helping thought leaders, authors, and speakers amplify their voices and step into greater visibility. She's known for her ability to reflect back the brilliance of her clients, putting words to their ideas in a way that sparks action and creates lasting impact. As a CEO and founder of Raised Voices, she specializes in positioning experts for book launches, speaking opportunities, and platform growth, especially those looking to pivot into the next level of thought leadership. With a signature process that combines storytelling, digital strategy, and sharp insight, she helps her clients shape messages that truly move people forward. Originally from the UK and now based in the US, she brings a global perspective to her work and is the author of A Power of Your Own. She's also the host of the podcast Where Speaking, which was created to level this public speaking playing field by offering world-class advice to rising voices. Please join me welcoming Nikki Groom. Nikki, welcome.
Thank you so much. I feel like you need some canned applause or something like that.
You're impressive on paper. I had met you many times, starting with the National Speakers Association conference like a year ago or so, and now, in the process of getting to know you for this show, I'm realizing how much more there is to this story, which is why I'm so excited to bring you on. And one of the questions I always kick off with when I meet with our experts, our hub partners, is how you came to provide services to these authors, these entrepreneurs who are writing books to help them grow a business. Where did that journey begin for you?
It's interesting because my first response is to say it was a happy accident. So that's probably where I would start. I came to be in the States in the first place through a marketing job. So I was the marketing director for a manufacturing company of all really thrilling, exciting things. And after 5 years in the States for the same company in the same role, I decided to start my own business. And in the beginning, I was really focused on brand positioning and copywriting, but also some fractional CMO work for different thought leaders and entrepreneurs. And someone who might be familiar to your audience, Jennifer Brown, she's a leading DEI speaker, author, Wall Street Journal bestselling author. She came to my attention because we had a mutual friend in common. And I guess she had a book to launch and 6 weeks to do it. And I don't know what it is with me, but sometimes I like to throw myself in the deep end. So I said, I've never done that before, but I think I can do it. And so we ended up working together. We launched her book successfully on Amazon. And then we ended up working together for the next 5 years, really building her brand and her business and her marketing presence across all different channels and to great success. So that was kind of how I got started. But then I find that pretty much everybody that I work with, both back then and now, especially with my focus on working specifically with professional speakers more so these days, in addition to just thought leaders and experts in general, pretty much everyone has either written a book or wants to write a book. And so I find that that's often the place that I like to play as well. And the work that I generally do with people when we go deep into the brand positioning process, oftentimes I'll say, oh, that's the title for a book right there. So it can be a good way to kind of get into what is the body of work that I want to create, what would make sense in terms of a book for me to write next. But that's, happy accident, really. So, yeah.
Well, happy accident, but you also were in the right place, right time and said yes.
I said yes.
Said yes.
And that's like a trend for me, definitely. I think sometimes, just kind of, and even just coming to the States in the first place, I remember hearing about that opportunity and the first thought was, you can't do that. Who on earth do you think you are? And then I realized that was the exact thing that I needed to do. So sometimes feeling that mix of fear and exhilaration can be a good sign of what you need to do next.
I bet you that also makes you a good person to work with because you can understand that trepidation that people are feeling when they're about to leap into something that feels a little unknown about the outcome, and they're maybe trying to get onto a bigger stage, more visibility, more recognition for their work and their value, which they want, but they also might have some angstiness about it. And the fact that you've gone through that journey yourself and can relate probably makes you the right person for them to work with.
Yeah, absolutely. I wrote my book, A Power of Your Own, about my entrepreneurial journey, but really it's about my journey with self-doubt and then how you just kind of keep going and find a way through despite that. And so it's something that I'm very familiar with. I think we all suffer with a little bit of the self-doubt blues from time to time, and we question whether we're really capable of something. And so I love to help my clients in terms of becoming their fiercest champions and reassuring them, and really holding up a giant mirror and reflecting back to them their brilliance, and holding the space for them to show up fully as they are, and figuring out a way to communicate that brilliance to the outside world so other people get it. They can connect it into their very real challenges and things like that. Yeah, it's my favorite part of the work that I do, actually. I think that that's very much connected to my why. It's like, if you've ever doubted yourself for a second, like, let's do this work together, and I'll help you see yourself as, you know, you really are, and everything that you're capable of. So
I mean, that seems like the best possible outcome working with a brand strategist is that they don't fluff you up to make you something that you're not, but they reflect back what you who you are and how you want to be seen, and they validate that you deserve to be seen that way. I'm thinking about how also this moment when someone has a book is a rebranding opportunity. I don't think every author comes into the project of writing a book thinking about it as a rebranding opportunity, but there's a moment where, if the book is done well and thoughtfully, it is often creating a piece of IP or a framework or a process, or it's naming things. It's structure. It's creating structure and processes that maybe were kind of loosely defined before, and then that leads to the idea of a program that you can do, or a mastermind, or a group, or something. And then it's like, well, now I need the rest of. I mean, that all feels tied together, but now it feels like the stepsister. Like, it doesn't feel like it fits. And you know, there's a piecemeal way of doing this, and then there's a holistic approach. So I'd love to hear specific problems that you're solving for authors. Like, how are you sort of approaching this?
Yeah, and again, I think I have a lot of empathy for this experience, having written my own book, but also worked with numerous clients in this journey. And I think sometimes it can be a little bit of, oh, now I have this, now I got to figure this piece out. And so even before we started talking today, we had just been kind of riffing on the fact that writing a book and publishing a book and getting it out into the world can be exhausting. And so it is so helpful to have a bit of support in that process. But one thing that I noticed after working as a marketing director with several thought leaders over the years is, as soon as they launched a book, it was something like, oh, we need a new website. And so to me, that's always a really nice first starting point. So focus on the book first, get a launch plan in action. But if you can also launch a new book or platform, or even page on your existing website that really speaks to what you're doing and ties it to the rest of your work, I feel like that's such a powerful first step. Because what happens is, when you share your new book, everyone's so excited for you on social media. People are commenting and they want to uplift and support you. Hopefully they have some kind of book champion team, or that's not the word that you use, but you know
Launch
what I'm trying
team.
to say. What do you launch team? Oh yeah, that makes way more sense. Yeah, some kind of, but people who are championing you and happy to do that. So you've launched the book, you have some buzz around that, and then you can have a website launch. You know, I'm so thrilled. This is my new website. And you can have that new enhanced positioning and messaging that really speaks to not only the work that you're doing today with the book, but what you want to kind of grow into. And then anything else can build on that momentum. So you're already kind of creating this real buzz, and people are like, wow, you know, Robbie is really doing amazing things, you know, new book, new website. So then you can launch a course, or then you might say, hey, did you even know I offered this service? So it just kind of provides this really amazing launch pad. And you can just, that's what we did with Jennifer Brown. And then we were able just to kind of ride that wave and keep building and building and building. And so that's really the way that I would look at it. And I also would say, put perfectionism on the shelf and don't take it back off, because I just think it's the process, however much we, even if you're type A and you like everything to be within your control, things are going to feel a little bit messy at times. And that's okay. And it is part of the process. And I think that one of the things I always recommend is that if things go wrong or things need to be adjusted, just be real, just be transparent in your messaging. Because I think people really connect into that. And again, those people who love you, who want to support you and champion you, they will regardless. So. Yeah.
I want to call attention to Jennifer Brown again, because, it's amazing that this is the person you got to trial this out with. So back in October of 2018, episode 115 of On the Schmooze, which is the podcast that predates the BizBook Pub Hub. And you can go to bizbookpubhub.com and actually scroll to the podcast archive section and scroll back to find this great episode. She was already really big back then, and doing such good work. And I loved how she sort of designed her life to be able to focus on speaking and writing books while her team was managing all this client work. And I reference this all the time. So, even more established people need a team to help them make the most of these opportunities. But I know that a lot of the people that are listening in probably are not at the place where they have lots of extra team members. Maybe they have a virtual assistant, maybe they don't, maybe they have a couple of team members, reporting to them on different projects. So where could someone like that get started? Like, what are some things that, maybe an audit, like how do they even know that an update's necessary or where to focus? Because they really have to start over from scratch, because that's the part that I'm always like, that's a lot of work. Like I'm in the moment of releasing a new book and I'm thinking, well, what can I do to modify my existing format? I don't want to like start over again. There's going to be a moment where that'll be necessary, but right now, oh my gosh, like that would be a lot. So
yeah, well,
where
think
can people go?
Yeah, I think that's a great point, because it's like, especially just launching the book and then figuring out all the pieces that go into that. And then thinking about, well, maybe I do need a new website now, or I do need this, or like it can be a giant investment and it can add up really quick. And of course, some people are in a better position than others to be able to just stretch to all that. And it feels like the right time and place. But I'm also a big fan of do the best you can with what you have. And so I always offer website audits for people. Oftentimes, if I do a webinar or something like that, or even off the back of this interview, I'll say to folks, feel free to reach out and I'd be happy to kind of give you my thoughts on your website and your platform and how you can elevate what you have right now and get even clearer on that messaging and make sure, maybe it's sort of changing a couple of the colors or just something very simple so that they can go back to their website personal, they can play around with the theme that they're in and make those updates. And then maybe, they circle back in a year or a couple of years and it's like, okay, now we're ready to completely tear everything down and rebuild. And so I do think, be mindful of what you can take on and do the best with what you have. And I think surrounding themselves with communities and hubs and, you have so many resources and you do so much in terms of supporting authors. I think plugging into communities like that, I think it just makes you feel less alone, because publishing a book can quite frankly feel a little lonely as well. It's like, there's so much and how do I do that? And even though you can do it by yourself, and sometimes we're forced to, I kind of wouldn't wish it on anyone. So if you aren't able right now to invest in help, for example, an executive assistant or someone like that, again, I would find those communities where you can just show up and be like, this is feeling hard today. Like, I really need some support and advice in terms of how I find my way through. So that's what I would recommend. Yeah.
Yeah. Everything comes down to time or money. Sometimes you have more of one or sometimes you have more of the other, but we rarely have both in quantities.
Yeah.
And so there is a point where you don't have as much time, but you've earned a good income and you've got maybe the profit account is looking good and you can take that and invest back in and get the right team of people in place to do if you really are doing a new website ground up, it should be a full marketing plan. Like, rebranding, understanding your market position, like doing all the analysis, doing all the strategy. That would be ideal. That is sort of like, I don't think the word Cadillac has the same meaning these days, but like whatever the top Ferrari of marketing would be.
I don't even know.
I was like, wow, I feel really old saying Cadillac. But short of that, doing that major overhaul, which I think is what people think they have to do, which is why they're like, I can't imagine that, or I don't have the income to make that full thing doing that. It could just be reviewing the text. Like you and I met, you were so gracious to offer me that audit, and I had actually come to the call having done some brainstorming with Tamsin Webster, who's an amazing branding strategist. And I came away from that conversation with some really great ideas. I used AI to help me refine some of the ideas she gave me. And I actually have not yet implemented them in total on my site, but I'm starting to use the messaging elsewhere. And I'm like, okay, I need to sit down and then just some slight tweaks. I've made, based on our conversation, I made some small changes to my homepage to make it more easy to navigate. Like it's little things. Like I think one of the feedback I had was I had like these like options for like, if you're this, or this, like go these 3 places, but it was text only. But now there's a little image with the text. And so it's a little more visible. It's a little easier to understand, like, oh, I'm being taken somewhere else. That's the kind of, I think you need a third person to like look at it to help you see your blind spots, because in your mind, your website makes complete intuitive sense. I mean, back in the day, I remember watching someone navigate a website that we designed with a nonprofit I was in, and we asked someone, like one of our volunteers, to navigate to 3 things on a list, and we all had to sit there quietly. And we're all behind the person being like, you just like we wanted to be like, but we watched her like scrolling around and like trying to, and it was like, oh, it's not as intuitive as we thought it was. Like,
yes,
that was a big lesson. So what would be, what, like someone was doing a self audit, like what would be a few things that they should look at to make sure that they have either in place or positioned well? Like what would be like 2 or 3 things that kind of come to mind as, a baseline starting place?
Yes, great question. I want to say, first of all, that I feel like there's a bit of a spectrum when it comes to websites and how we feel about our own websites, because you had just expressed, like, sometimes you can feel like, yeah, I think it's pretty good. And then it's only when someone else can't find something or, struggles to navigate to what they need that you think, oh, maybe it's not as good as I thought. And then I think there's also a little bit further along in terms of you maybe more urgently needing a bit of an overhaul is when it's literally like, I can't even look at my website anymore. I'm so embarrassed. I'm so ashamed. It doesn't say anything about who I am. It's oftentimes when people come to me. In fact,
Yeah, at that
I had
point.
someone come to me recently, thanks to you, who has decided to work with us, which we're just thrilled about, has a great book. And it's just like her website is very kind of buttoned up and, dare we say, blah. And it's just not representative of who she is or her personality or anything like that. But in terms of your website, so if you're looking at your website right now and thinking, what on earth do I do differently? I would say the very first thing is to just look at your website above the fold and see if it very clearly says what it is that you do, for who and why. And so I know that sounds simple, but it's so easy to skip past that step. And oftentimes I'll go to someone's site and it will say like leadership author or culture speaker. And that's fine. We're kind of headed in the right direction. But I think being really clear about, I call it your unique advantage. So, what is your truth and your message? Who are your people? What are they struggling with? How are they feeling? And how can you speak to that in a way that makes them feel seen and heard and understood? And then you also need to have a sense of like, what is my movement or my vision for change? What is the one thing that I want to see be different in the future? And of course, it's easy for me to say this, but connect those together. And so I asked some questions just now. The first step might be just grab a journal and riff, or record yourself answering those questions and see what comes out. Have a conversation with a peer or someone who's already championing your work and see what emerges, because I think that's a great starting point. And then you can start to distill down. You might have said one sentence or a couple sentences that you're like, ooh, there it is. That's what I do. So that positioning right above the fold, first thing on your website, is so important. And it's very easy to skip past that. So if your website doesn't very clearly say who you are, why you do what you do, and who you do it for, then that's the first step.
I'm
Yeah.
feeling a little called out here. I'll admit.
Did not mean to do
But
that.
this is
No one
exactly
feel any
why.
shame.
No, this is exactly why I know I need to make at least these baseline tweaks that you're talking about, because I get positive feedback overall with my website because it's clean looking, it has some white space, it's not super cluttered, but I keep adding things to the homepage and I'm not a web designer, right? So it's not like the most thought out process. But what is there is a lot of credibility. And I think that's what people are reacting to, is the like sheer volume of credibility and a number of topics and a number of media formats and all that. So I think it legitimizes me, which is ultimately what I need the website to do. But I also do a lot of different things. So this is where I was like working on, Tamsin gave me the idea of a unifying message, be seen, be heard. Like, this is the thing I do for my clients, no matter what I'm selling them, what services we're doing together. And that's the part that when you look at the message above the fold that I've had, it's not as unifying. And so I think that some of us have something, but is it as good as it could be? And maybe it was
Right.
fine, but now we can take the time to journal or talk to a colleague and get that feedback. Or if you've been loading up AI with who you are, you could be like, AI, I need to update this little sentence on my website. Like, what do I do? Like, who am
Yes.
I? And ask it to give you like 5 options. Like, and then you go ask
Yeah.
real people whether this resonates with them. Like, you don't just take it from AI. But yeah, I mean, I'm just because we're out there doing the work for other people doesn't mean our stuff is always quite so good.
No, and here's the thing that I know about you. You're a multi-potentialite. You can and you do so many different things. And I feel like you're just endlessly kind of creating new ways to help authors do their best work and just make life easier for them. So it makes sense. Like, if you're constantly kind of tweaking and adding things to your site, there's a lot going on. And so it can be hard sometimes to distill that down. I love, by the way, just want to pause on the fact that you mentioned AI, because if you use AI every single day like I do, it does learn you. So if it's something like ChatGPT, you can say, how would you describe me? And it can be a lovely validating experience. Hopefully, I haven't heard of anyone who's had a negative experience in that regard. And you could plug in some of these questions and see what it says. I do think that AI can sometimes be overwhelming because it's giving you so much. And sometimes that maybe takes away from what you might intuitively have said. So I would say it tends to be a good place to go when you've already got some ideas and you kind of just want to condense things down. It's like, help me condense this down to one sentence and give me 10 options. Being that specific, I think can alleviate the overwhelm.
That's great.
And I can't remember my other point, but yes, AI is great, and just be careful and intentional about it. Oh, I do remember my other point, which is that I worked with a cohort of folks the other day who were trying to figure out their one positioning statement, the one sentence that they wanted at the top of their website. And they all did a phenomenal job of answering those questions and coming up with a sentence. I say that because each sentence said, it contained the things that I said it had to contain. It said who they were, who they are in service of, and why they do the work that they do. And each sentence was a little bit too long, a little bit too overpacked with information, and it was kind of missing a little something. And so one of the things that we did together is figure out, okay, how, which of those words feel superfluous, which can we kind of leave by the wayside? And then also, what is and maybe people are already saying it, they're saying it regularly, like there's a certain thing that they always say, or maybe there's a certain thing that you write about in your book that you just feel so passionately about, or if you're a speaker, maybe it's something that's in your keynote talk, but it's like, what is the thing that you can say that's going to really pluck at our heartstrings? So what I often say is, when you're trying to answer those questions, answer from your heart and not your head, and just see what else emerges that didn't before.
I love this. All right. So above the fold.
Yeah.
And for those who are not following what that means, basically when you first
Oh,
go
yeah,
to a
right.
website, the above the fold comes from back when newspapers, we would read them in print and they were folded in half. So what would show before you unfolded it? And here it's before you scroll down. So when you first open your website, what's the first thing people see? Like the hero image, the text on the hero image, all of that. What is the first 20 seconds or even less? What is it, like 3 seconds? What's the first 3 second sort of image that people are getting from from your website overall. All right, where do they go next? What's another quick thing?
Yeah, and you just threw me because I'm like, wow, am I old for saying above the fold? I've just said it for so long, but thank you for that clarification. Very important. So I'd say the next thing now you're thinking about, well, two things. So before we scroll anywhere, does your navigation menu very clearly say what it is that you do? Are we making it hard for people to find the information that you need? For example, if you have a book, is there clearly in the navigation menu something that says book? Sometimes I've discovered that people have podcasts, and I didn't know about that until I dug through their website. So if you have a podcast, like, make it easy for people to find. If you offer certain services, don't necessarily bury it under services, but think about how you can kind of call out some of those things. And you might just want like 5 key things in that navigation menu, but make it super clear. Don't make people think, what happens if I click here? I don't know what this is going to be about. Like, make that super obvious. So that's another thing that is worth saying, because I bet if you look at your navigation menu, there might, not yours specifically, Robbie, but there might be some tweaks that you need to make. It can be an easy fix. Mm-hmm. And then I would say we're going to start to scroll now. A couple things, there's actually even more that I could say above the fold, but we're going to start to scroll. And I think one of the things that people often jump into is, now let me give people my bio and tell them all about who I am. And there's a couple things here, because I have heard it said that when it comes to branding, it's not about you, but I always say it is about you. Of course it's about you. When you're a personal brand, when you're an author, when you're a thought leader, you're an expert, of course it's about you, but there's some balance there, right? And so we really want to invite your audience in. So as you think about the messaging right underneath the fold, what I think is really effective is when you can touch on the challenge that your people are having and start to introduce your solution. So that can be a great use for that first section on your website. So you just kind of set the stage, create a bit of context, so people are like, oh, yes, I am in the right place, and this person may be able to help me with some of the things that I'm struggling with.
I love that. I think, not burying things. I agree with you. I find, as a person who interviews people for a podcast, I discover through our deep research in our prep that they have books and podcasts that they didn't mention in their form. Like, I have what do you want us to tell? What's your intro or bio? And they don't mention these things. They don't give us links to it. They just like leave it out entirely. And I'm like, this is a really big deal. Like, we should highlight that. So don't make it hard for decision makers to go and find that out. I also tell people all the time, and I'm curious for your feedback on this, that if you're just getting started, a website's not the first thing I would build. I would actually go and sell services to people who already know you, and don't need a website to validate that you're a person who could help them. And I will tell you from personal experience, in 2020, I ended up in mid-April, announcing a pilot 4-week program to teach people how to become more confident and competent using Zoom. And I ran it 4 months in a row with no breaks. And there was no mention of it on my website until month 3. And I, at that point, threw something really poorly designed on my homepage, because again, I'm not a web person. But no one who bought from me in those 4 months was coming through my website. It only became important for me to have a better, more thoughtfully structured website when I was starting to sell to companies in the fall of 2020. Because now you would refer me to somebody else, and then that person needs to validate that I am a real human being that could offer them something. And so the website then needed to kind of reflect the totality of like, oh, this is a virtual event design consultant. We can hire him to be our Zoom producer. That was more important. But the first few times people were hiring me, it was just like word of mouth. So I also don't think I would have known enough about the branding to do a good site in April of 2020. I wouldn't have known what I was doing. So I think cart and horse, when do we sort of need this? To me, it's when we're selling outside of our initial like inner circle. And when those people are passing your name along, then you have to have it. I mean, you can get away with like a 1-page website for a while, like a landing page for your book. Like, if that's, you know what I mean? Like with an opt-in, and then build out from there. I fear that the website becomes a noble obstacle. It becomes this huge project, but they're not serving clients. they're not selling their services, they're not building a pipeline, but they feel like they're doing something and they're pouring money into a business that doesn't actually have any clientele. I hope that working with someone like you would steer them back towards building a business first. And this is why you hire reputable people. But what are your thoughts on the timing of all of this? Like, when do we level up? When do we get started? All of that.
First of all, I love what you shared about that. It's something that I think about in terms of experimentation and the power of testing behind the scenes. I feel like it can be super helpful. And I've been an entrepreneur and business owner since 2012. And so there have been many different iterations of my business, and most recently Raised Voices. But before I officially launched Raised Voices, which by the way, I didn't do for a really long time, it was already in operation. I just didn't have a website for it. And the thing that made me get a website for it was, even though we're building websites for other people, the thing that made me get a website is that we were sponsoring the National Speakers Association Influence Conference. So literally the week before, it's like, let's get this website up. But the business was already in operation long before that. And so I do agree. And I've done it with other things in the past too. Sometimes it can be really useful to just kind of float out an idea to a trusted community or network and just see kind of where things go, and then allow there to be this process of evolution and iteration and things like that, so that you can get it to a place where you feel really good about it before you float it out on the World Wide Web. At the same time, I think that it's okay to have a good enough for now website out there. But I also think what you're highlighting is something that can be very tempting. And I've done business strategy and mentoring and mastermind groups in the past. And one of the things I've noticed is that it can be very tempting sometimes to choose something in the marketing mix and make that our all in focus. And whether that's, creating Instagram reels or launching a website, it can be a useful distraction from the fact that we're not actually selling. And so a lot of people I find have a lot of mindset blocks around selling and things like that. When I think back to when I first started my business, I was terrified to get on the phone with people. And now it's my favorite thing to do. So it's like totally one of those things that you have to be prepared to be a beginner in the first place, and to come off the phone and think, oh my gosh. And as well, when you transition your business, it's like suddenly I need a new script. I need a new way of presenting this. I need to figure out, I need to have enough conversations that I figure out what is the thing that I'm saying that kind of creates that spark of recognition in someone else's eyes. So that's, I think, what you're talking about, is like sometimes you just need to, tap into your network, have those conversations, get those referrals, and that can be enough for a really long time. Like I said, Raised Voices in the beginning, we just were running off referrals, and the website didn't feel like such a high pressure thing. But I think as you're really starting to think about building your reputation and your body of work as a thought leader, it ultimately needs to be in the mix, because it just kind of elevates you and differentiates you above anyone else. But I also, so I think there's pressure there sometimes unnecessarily, and there's certain steps that maybe you need to take.
Yeah, it's like, I feel like it should be in the mix, and there's a point where it becomes very necessary. Like when you're sponsoring events. Or basically when you're selling and being seen and visible to a bigger audience beyond your initial community or network, then I think, but even that, like, I remember for a while I've sold using a mixture of Google Docs and Google Forms, like lots of things, before I had any branding. I didn't have a logo. I didn't have anything on my website, but it was all kind of who you know. And then at some point, I want to sell. I just did this with BizBook Pub Hub, and my own book launch services. For the longest time, it was a Google form. And then it was like, okay, well, I'm going to build out this whole page talking about my services. And even now I'm doing my launch team through a Google form, but I'm about to do an ad to SOS Media Query, which is really exciting for me. When this airs, it'll already have come out. But the fact that I'm investing in this to reach this big audience of potential launch team members. And now I'm like, oh, a Google form won't cut it. I need to create the landing page that goes to the Google form to have that more polished, like, hi, everybody, like, I'm a real person, like I have a business. Right. But, I didn't need it just to reach my own network. And I think sometimes in our head, this is back to like the imposter syndrome that, that the people feel, and they want to look really qualified. and they maybe need that self-worth to come from their marketing materials looking a certain way. And yes, if you want to charge $20,000 for a keynote, you have to have a website that makes it look like you're a $20,000 keynote speaker. I mean, those things are true, but when you're first starting, you're not asking for $20,000. You're just getting started, and cart and horse sometimes gets in the way of building the business at all. I love that you are situating this as part of a larger branding conversation. And I think that we have to be careful when hiring someone to do this kind of task, because it could be seen as a task and not a strategy. And then you get that cookie cutter, like that author you were mentioning who had a very buttoned up website. I'm sure the website looks very professional, but I bet you it's an out of the box website that somebody like sold her or him. You didn't even say the person, the author, like it was a simple enough, easy to implement solution for that time, but it did not reflect the branding of the person who had the website. And there's I want to distinguish these two things. Like you can get a basic thing up, sure, but I love that you're situating this as that larger, like, who are you? What's your message? And not just what your message is for today, but what direction do you want us to be all going in with you? And that to me distinguishes your services. Why I love that you're part of the BizBook Pub Hub, because authors do reach that point where they're like, maybe I need to have all this like line up.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's why for the longest time I was like, I wish I just had one thing. Again, like you could do so many different things. And I was like, what is the one thing I can call myself? And for ages, I just said I'm a business, brand, and marketing strategist, because it seemed to cover kind of all the things. And it can be tempting, right, to just jump in straight into the website. And sometimes there's a time and a place for that. Like you said, if there's just a task, I just need a new website that says something about my book, or a new page, just whack it up, off you go. And know that later on you'll iterate, you'll make it better. But the way that we always look at working with folks is that the website is the end part of the project. And that is really the platform that brings all of the work that we've done together to life. But it always begins with a brand positioning. So let's figure out exactly what it is that you stand for and how to talk about what you do in a way that makes sense to other people. Then translate that into messaging that does you justice for every single page of your website. And then think about, as we're doing that, how does that correlate to your site? So we talked about earlier how easily it can be sometimes on certain websites to get lost or not know where you should click. So really thinking about how can we now translate that experience as we've got to know you and what you're all about and your key values and what's important to you. How do we translate all of that to the website? So there's ease, there's flow, and people see you. Because I think that oftentimes, you might get to hear an author speak, and they're selling books, and they're dynamic, and how they write in their book is just like, wow, this person's incredible. But you come to their website and there's a disconnect. It's like, is this the website of the same person? And so what we're really working to do is to close that disconnect, to close that gap, so that people feel really seen. Like when they look at their websites, it's like, that's me. And actually, I need a better analogy than this, but this is one that a client gave me. It almost feels like when we finished our work together, they said that it was like I'd given them a pair of shoes that were one size too big. Like those shoes did belong to them, but they weren't quite ready to fit into them yet. And there is that sense of, we're not creating something that isn't truly aligned with who you are or what you're capable of, but it kind of just expands your vision of, oh, this is where I could go. And maybe you couldn't fully see yourself or the possibilities before. And so that's really exciting to be a part of. And like you said, you have to be clear, and that's something we do together, about where am I going? Where do I want to go? What's important to me? And so there's so many different things to think about. And I think because I did marketing for so many, and I still do, but because, I've done marketing since 2002 or something like that, and then worked as an entrepreneur. So I also am very familiar with those sort of solopreneur or small business owner challenges. And I've done a bit of the business stuff and the brand, all of this comes together under the umbrella of Raised Voices to make sure that how you show up feels right, it feels real, and it does you justice, and you can reach your goals for your book, for your business. That's what it's really all about. So
I love this so much. And I love that you're, again, part of the hub, because for me, I wanted all the authors, the writers and authors who were seeking expert support to have a place to go. We have over 24 hub partners. These are the experts who help authors navigate writing, editing, publishing, and marketing their book and building their brand. And it's so easy to fall into the predatory space. There's a lot of people who are looking just to make a buck off of these new authors. And I wanted instead there to be a community of vetted experts who are going to ask you strategic questions to make sure that whatever service they're providing fits into the larger goals that you have and move you towards the next thing so that you have space to grow into it. I love the idea of a website being a little bit too big for you so that you have room to grow. Otherwise, it's outdated almost immediately. You do all this work and you're like, oh, but now there's no space to expand, you want it to feel good for a while. There's a moment, I've now gone through 3 major website changes. The first one was something I had hack pulled together. I hired twice I've hired somebody, and a lot of it was the theme stopped being supported. That was one of the things. I paid I paid a lot of money for a theme from Michael Hyatt, actually, and I loved the theme. And it was, I had to hire a friend to help me implement it, but I made it my own. It looked really good. And then one day he just stopped supporting it, which was fine. I didn't need any support. And then 2 years later, you're like, oh, so it means things are breaking and my plugins don't work. I don't think I understood that what it means is that I'm oh, okay. I now have to find so sometimes you're forced into a redo the whole thing because the technology's changed or it's sort of like when you buy a house and you're like, wow, it hasn't been updated since the 70s. You don't want to have a website that looks like it's from 20 years ago, or 10 years ago. You want to make sure you're using the most current technology, and that changes so frequently, which is why you want to work with someone who knows what's on the cutting edge so that you don't have to change your website again in a year because you didn't have a certain format for your cover. So there's all these missing pieces that you can get lost in this. I'd love to though talk about the hub itself, because you said yes to being in the hub because we attract the kind of people, the kind of entrepreneurs that you have had so much success working with. And I knew that you'd be able to serve them really well. And you've been very engaged. I want to just say thank you, because this was a little experiment of mine, right? This is something a year and a few months ago, I was like, oh, I'm going to try this thing, I'd love your thoughts on why a space like this was important, the ways you've engaged in the hub with other hub partners or with the writers and authors, the events you've attended. Just what are your thoughts as a person who's been a part of this experience about the value of it?
Yeah, I might start by answering this question in a way that you don't expect, because, we talked earlier about how people oftentimes spend a lot of time on specific marketing activities in the hopes that it will get them where they need to go. And I realized, what we're talking about is people are trying to build an audience oftentimes. And we're talking about a network and tapping into, your community. And sometimes people don't always have that. And because I've told you before, but when I first met you, to me, it felt like instant connection. Everything that you're doing for the NSA is just phenomenal. And so I'm a big Robbie Samuels fan. So that relationship, first of all, made it an absolute no-brainer. Anything that you're doing, I'm there, I'm in support of you. And so this is exactly what we were talking about earlier, right? In terms of finding your champions. There are people who are going to support you no matter what. And so I love that you've created this hub. I think it is an extension of your values and how you show up in terms of trying to connect people and give them the resources and the support that they need. So yeah, I want to be a part of that. And then I think as well, the people that you attract, the authors that you attract, the other hub partners that you attract, these are good folks. And I was lucky to know a few already. Jen Grace comes to mind, an incredible book publisher. And I've been having great fun having conversations with some of the other folks. You've been amazing in terms of making sure that I'm supported and have what I need. And you've offered you've kind of thought about all the things in terms of, this interview, or what else can we do to make sure that you get we kind of elevate you and your brand. So that's been amazing. Yeah. And ultimately, I just want to spend more time around people who get it, who share similar values, who want similar things, who are writing about and building thought leadership around topics that really matter. And so I find that authors in certain spaces are doing that. And I would describe the hub as exactly that kind of place. And for that reason, exactly the kind of place that I want to be in. So.
Oh my gosh. I'm definitely clipping this and we're going to share it somewhere. Noted. I actually was just thinking as you're saying all this, I was sitting there being like, oh, the bottom of the BizBook PubHub, like referral partners page, there's like a section for video testimonials that is empty because I was like, oh, when am I going to get around to doing that? And I'm like, oh, we asked that question on this podcast. By the way, friends, if you're trying to do something and you want to gather, information from people, it's like build the question into an interview. It just organically can happen, like whether you're writing a book or you're trying to write a series of content on some posts. But yeah, thank you so much. Like, I'm really glad that it's resonating with you and that it feels on brand for who I am as well, because it does feel like an extension of the way I think about the world. I wanted there to be generous entrepreneurs coming, abundant minded, who weren't feeling like, oh, but we're in competition because we do the same thing. It's like, well, no, like in fact, I get to be more specific about who I work with because I don't have to do all the work that comes my way. I might be able to be choosier and more branded and more specific, like stay in my lane kind of thing. So it's been a really incredible year and a half. Not even. We have our Kindle cross promotion campaigns now 3 times a year. This show comes out twice a week. We've got these amazing experts like you. We have the monthly events. So, there's so much packed into bizbookpubhub.com. I'm really proud of how people have stepped up to be part of it. And for me, I mean, it's a really long pipeline. I can't work with an author on a book launch unless they have a book. So
yeah.
and likewise, they're going to be much more likely to work with you if they have the book, right? So I love that we're now getting to build referral networks with people who help the entrepreneurs actually get to the point of having a book. And Jen T. Grace is a great person to call out in this regard. Publish Your Purpose is her publishing house, and she does an incredible job nurturing her authors through that process of getting the book out of their head and into print and making it look good. And then, so then, the launching and the marketing, the branding, and all the rest of it, these other pieces, we get to all sort of work together. So I, as we close up here, would just love your final thought. If there's anything in particular you think that someone who's writing a book to help them grow their business, maybe something that heading into that process, connecting to the work that you do, your expertise, is there something they should be thinking about or asking themselves as they get started that would help them more easily have the through line from their book to what's coming next? Like, I know it's not usually the way they're thinking about it because they're just like, I have to write a book. But what if you could wave a magic wand and get every new author to have a moment of like, oh, let me think about that. What should they ask themselves?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. And you're right, because I feel like even when I think about A Power of Your Own, I'm really proud of the book, but it was just kind of like, I need to write a book and it's going to be about all the things. And and don't get me wrong, people have really enjoyed it and things like that. But I find a lot of the authors, speakers, thought leaders I work with have written a book, which was almost like they were clearing their throat. It was like, I need to write this memoir. I need to just kind of like get something down on paper. And so what I would love is for them to pause and really lean into what is it that I want in the future? Where do I want to be in front of which audiences? And think about those revenue opportunities, especially when it comes to nonfiction. Are there certain organizations that I would love it if every single person in an organization had a copy of my book? And if that's the case, what is that organization? What are their leaders and teams struggling with? And how does my message meet them where they are? So just getting really clear about that connection point, just as we talked about with the website and trying to kind of make that, kind of do that dance, if you will. That's the same thing that I would think about when writing your book. How do I connect the dots between what I do and what I'm passionate about and what my message is for the world and what my specific audience really needs to hear? Because I think that's just going to make it a big difference and really shortcut your learning journey, shall we say.
Yeah, it's basically strategy. I mean, having probably a strategic partner help you figure that out would be great, but just to make sure that the time and effort and money makes all that that goes into the book benefits the business long run. That's wonderful. Hey, how can people find you and follow your work?
So I'm at Nikki Groom pretty much everywhere on social media. And then also you can find us at raised-voices.com. That hyphen is so annoying. I'm on the brink of getting raisedvoices.com, but don't go there because it's not ours yet. But this is evergreen. So maybe by the time you look, it's like, oh, Nikki,
Yay,
finally got the
congratulations.
domain. But yeah, Raised Voices, LLC, check us out. And just reach out to me on social media and let me know what you've been up to. If you want a website audit, I'm sure we can figure something out for you. So.
And we're also going to put all this, including a link to your hub partner profile, on the website bizbookpubhub.com, where we have show notes from all the shows that come out, which is every Tuesday and Thursday. There's a new episode, a mixture of author panels, author interviews, and these expert interviews. Tons of content, really, really amazing. I hope you're checking it out and subscribing. You can also learn about all the upcoming free virtual networking events, the Kindle cross promotion campaigns, all kinds of good content at bizbookpubhub.com. Nikki, thank you. Thank you so much for this conversation. Really appreciated it.
Thank you. It was a real pleasure.